Hi, everyone. How are we doing? Good. Are you really, or are you just cold? Because I'm cold. It's freezing. Somehow, yeah, right? Well, you're always in a sweater, Nathan. So it's okay. Hi, so in case you don't know me, I'm Mrs. Fernandez. I am an English professor here in our wonderful English department at LSC-Kingwood. Woohoo! Nobody. Clap for the English department. We do a lot of hard work. Okay, good. So I'm going to talk about 4 authors here and the last thing that they gave us as far as their art and their writing. So the title of this presentation is, I know, right? Okay, nobody cares about transitions, but I do. Last words, Butler, Greene, Lispector, and Marquez. So we're going to talk about 4 authors. Of course, their books are here, as Professor Barr said earlier. These 4 authors have, me personally, as a writer, taught me so much. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about why I chose them here. So the actual pieces that I'm going to talk about today, there are 4 specifically. The last things that they wrote or published. For Octavia Butler is called The Book of Martha, and it's part of a collection called Bloodchild. Bloodchild and Book of Martha were the last one, but Book of Martha, I think, pertains more to our discussion. The Last Word is a short story called The Last Word from a collection called The Last Word. I think Graham Greene made that obvious, right? The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector. This is the beautiful lady in red here. And then Until August by, yes, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. That was actually published after his death. It was the last thing he wrote. He was battling dementia at the time. Okay? So let's go to the next one. So why these authors specifically? I've learned something from each one of these authors. So when I think about the gift that you give as a writer to the world, the last thing you want to say, the last thing you want to write, like you think about what you've contributed, you think about what hopes you hope to continue. I think about these authors and the works that I'm about to share with you today. Also, I like them, and it's my presentation, so I get to pick who I talk about. Next. So this is the big reason, right? These authors spent their lives in the pursuit of finding answers and interrogating systems. They asked a bunch of questions, and thus, because they asked questions, they were trying to find answers, which is one of the primary jobs as a writer. You're constantly questioning things, and sometimes you question things also as you're questioning yourself, which is a very existential place to be and very, very meta. I do not recommend it, but sometimes it just is like that. So I like this quote here from Clarice Lispector, who says it so much more eloquently than I do, and ironically is this part of Hour of the Star. So long as I have questions to which there are no answers, I shall go on writing. And it's very interesting when we're going to talk about her. She actually had an inkling that her time was coming. And she wrote this sentence in the work that she was working on at the time of her near demise, or her demise. So it's interesting that this is what she says as she is dying from cancer. So let's get started. Who are we talking about first? Octavia Butler. Why? Because today's the anniversary of her death. Yeah, it's a big one. You know how it's 6 at the end and it's a 6 here, and it's one of the big ones, right? All right, so Octavia Butler is the person we're going to talk about today. Who all knows Octavia Butler? Has heard of her? If you do not, you're in for a treat. Read her books. She's amazing. Let's talk a little bit about her. And so there's a lot of stuff. Octavia has a lot of stuff. I had one screen for her. I did my best. Okay, so when she was 13, she actually published with the help of a teacher. If anything tells you how important teachers are in the role of writers and artists and creatives, this tells you at 13, a teacher helped her publish her first story in a sci-fi magazine. 13. What were you doing at 13? I was not writing things for publication at 13, so I'm just saying. Huh? You were in COVID, yeah. You had time. Was it 13? It wasn't 13 years ago.
No.
Oh, you at 13.
I was 13, yeah.
Ooh. Was it?
14,
Ooh.
14.
Yeah. So you definitely weren't doing this. No one was doing this but her. Knowing Octavia Butler, she probably would have used COVID to like write something really horrific. We'll never know. Okay, so we also have this idea, her aunt. We have to remember that of the place where she grew up, right? Or the era of where she grew up. She was told by her aunt that Negroes don't write, so why is she writing? She's wasting her time. Clearly showed her, right? Also, she is the first African-American woman to achieve prominence as an author of science fiction. Truth fact. We have N.K. Jemisin. We have, her name just escapes me. She wrote The Spider Story, People Who Had Me Before in 1302. We can't have those authors unless we have Octavia Butler first. And she's the first one that did it. So if we're talking about trailblazers and people who kicked open the door for other writers behind her, especially African-American writers in this genre, she's it. We also have something really interesting. She doesn't have a 4-year degree. She actually went to community college and got her associates. You know why I'm saying that, right? There you go. I'm right here. All right. And of course, she died suddenly, and she fell. So academics, from my reading, the academics are saying she fell as a result of her having a stroke. And it wasn't so much the stroke that killed her, but the fall from the stroke that killed her, okay? But she was already having some health issues already. She had hypertension at the time. So her mortality was like front and center, right? So though she was not of age to she was rather young when she passed on. I think she was in her 50s, early 50s, mid 50s. Her mortality was right front and center, right in front of her. Next. Okay, so let's talk about the first story. It's called Book of Martha. It's very, very short. In fact, we actually have it in our databases. So if you wanted to go to JSTOR and put in Book of Martha, you can actually read Book of Martha, or you can Google it, and it's out there for free. Either way, it's fine, but it's a good read. So we have this really interesting story. We have this woman who happens to be a writer, who happens to be an African-American writer, and she dies. She doesn't know she's dead quite yet. She meets God. And God says, you know what, I have a job for you. And she's all like, but are you really God, or am I dreaming? What's going on here, right? And God says to her very peacefully, humanity's getting on my nerves. I don't know what else to do. Like, I have sent floods, I have sent fires, I have sent feast and famine, and yet the adolescence of humanity is such that it is bothering me. And it is going to essentially destroy itself. We need someone, by we, it's God, need someone who is creative and understands humanity and has been at the low part of the totem pole to help solve the issue. You have all of eternity to figure it out, because you're dead, so you're not going back. You have all of eternity to figure out. Once you have the idea, let me know. I'll give you a little bit of my power to implement it. This is what God tells her. And this is what is an interesting thing about this particular story, is that when Octavia Butler is describing this author, this writer, she is described as an African-American writer with a broad face. A female African-American writer with a broad face. She's describing herself. So this being the last thing that she writes before she dies, and her already knowing that I'm not in the best of health, This is what she's giving us. She's giving us the idea of how do we fix humanity? How do I leave this better than how I found it? And so she's trying to kind of come to grips with all the things, trying to come to grips with what does it mean to solve, not even solve humanity, save humanity. Because the alternative of not saving humanity is that God starts all the way over. And so now it's on her shoulders. The character in the story says, well, what if I don't do it? God says, okay, I will pick someone else, but they won't have the care and creativity that you will. So it's on her shoulders. God says, I need you to think about Job, Jonah, and Noah, about what those stories in the Bible teach, and then give me your answer. So she does come up with an answer, and she creates a utopia where as people dream, they live the best lives they want to live. If you want to be LeBron, you get to be LeBron. If you want to be Beyonce, who does not want to be Beyonce, you get to be Beyonce, right? You want to be a millionaire, you get to be a millionaire in your sleep. But when you wake up, you're regular. So she creates a utopia in dreams. But that's not a solution. It's a solution, but not the solution, because what will happen if everybody lives the lives that they want in their dreams? Why would you, right? Why would you? So in trying to solve a problem, she creates another one. And so we come with the idea of the big question that she wants to answer. Oh, wait, we have to go. I already told you all this. I said all this. The central question, can humanity be fixed without losing something essential in the process? This is the big question that she's trying to answer. And answer it, she kind of sort of does. Nathan says, you cannot answer that. And Nathan, she does answer it. Not in the way you think, because she's creative and she's Octavia Butler and she can do no wrong. All right, so let's go to the next writer here. Graham Greene is our next writer. Graham Greene. How many of you guys have heard of The Quiet American? What's the other book that's really big? Power and the Glory, which is amazing. The other one that they made into a movie, End of the Affair. End of Affair. No. Okay. So first of all, if you've not seen those movies, I need you to go stream them. It's your homework. I will fail you if you don't do it. I'm looking at you, Nathan. They're great movies. So let's talk about Mr. Greene now. Mr. Greene is English. He actually died in Switzerland. So he was a journalist, I believe. Yeah, he was a journalist for a while before he became a novelist. Traveled the world, went to Cuba, went to the US, went to Mexico, where he wrote The Power and the Glory. We'll talk about that book in a bit. And did all the things. He struggled with depression as a teenager, and at one point was considered bipolar, but that diagnosis didn't come with the same criteria as modern day bipolarism. So it was kind of like, yeah, you're bipolar, but are you bipolar or are you just depressed? Or are you just having a day? Who knows, right? So back then, when he was diagnosed, and when people were trying to diagnose him, they didn't have the same criteria as we do today. He converted to Catholicism because he was getting married. His wife was Catholic, so he converted to Catholicism and never left it, but always questioned it, which actually shows up in so much of his writings and so much of his purpose of writing. He questions systems, he questions rituals, archaic rituals, and questions not whether or not we should do it, but whether or not they hold the value that we think that they do, right? So let's talk about The Power and the Glory. The Power and the Glory is a story about a priest. They call him the whiskey priest, who is, if I remember correctly, Dr. Barr, remind me, he was on the run. Yes. He was on the run from the government, who got rid of all the churches in Mexico, and he sires a child, and he's trying to live, essentially. He's trying to, not die. So you would think, oh, it's an interesting book. It's fiction. The Catholic Church hated that book. It was actually on the naughty list for the Catholic Church. Catholic Church has a list of books where they're like, they're Catholics of the world, please do not read it. This was on that list. I think it may still be on the list, actually. I'll get back to you on that one. I think it is actually still on the list. So it's definitely on the naughty list, and it's the one he's like one of the big ones he's known for. Quiet American is another one that he's known for. All right, so we talked about his skepticism towards institutions. Let's talk about the end of his life. He died in his 80s. He died of leukemia in 1991, and he still was questioning Catholicism, but not quite faith, but belief. He has two definitions for faith and belief. I think it's the next slide here. No, it's not. It's coming. There it is. His two ideas of faith and belief. One where he's like, belief is rational and faith is irrational. Belief is more logical. Faith is ineffable. Like, I know things exist, and though I cannot see it, I have faith, versus I can only believe what I see, hear, and feel. So his two definitions of faith and belief, which we use interchangeably, is one way that he's like bucking the system. Let's go back one. All right, so let's talk about this short story. I promise you, they're not all religious. It just so happens that the first two have like religious undertones, but the next two do not. I promise you. So the last word. So we have this story. It's metaphysical, in fact, where the world has conquered all the things, racism and hunger, and it's all one word, all one world, right? It's not, there's no countries, there's no different currencies, everything is all one, everyone's united. And so they've gotten rid of everything that distinguishes differences between people, including religion. It opens up with this old man who is in an apartment, and he's not sure why he's there, but he gets a knock on the door. He gets a plane ticket and a passport, a fake passport. It's not his name on there, but it is his photo. And he's going to go somewhere. He's going to go meet the general. That's what he is told. And he knows enough, because his memory is gone, he knows enough that the broken crucifix that he has with him is illegal. So he actually like hides it as he's traveling. When he's done, arrives at the part where he's at, he is given these robes. He's given these robes. And that's when he is told, oh, you're the last pope, and thus you are the last living Christian on the planet. The general wants to do you honor, and he wants to meet you. So they do a whole like gun salute. He goes and meets the general. He's all still confused because he's just like, I'm the Pope? When did that happen? So the story, I'm not gonna ruin the story for you because it's really, really good. There was an attempt on his life, which led to him not remembering that he's the Pope. And then, of course, what will happen is what inevitably happens. You are the last living Christian on this planet. Once you are dead, there is no more religion. You are more symbolic than anything else. The general assassinates him. And in the moment that the general assassinates him, the thought becomes, well, the Pope says, thank you so much for doing it. I've been living in the dark, and once you assassinate me, I'll be living in the light. That just idea there puts doubt in the general's head. He doesn't not execute him, he does. But in the execution and the thinking, doubt happens. And because doubt is there, Graham is talking more about doubt being not just a space, but fertile ground for other things. As long as there's always doubt, it's a challenge to systems that believe in certainty. Yeah? Next. It's gripping, right? And it's only like 5 pages. It's insane. Next. Right, so that's the central question of this particular thing, what he's actually trying to answer. If a system achieves total control, can it ever eliminate doubt? You know the answer, but I'll have him answer at the end. Next. Next writer, Clarice Lispector. Has anybody ever heard of this one? Yes, yes, all right. Welcome to the world of Clarice Lispector. She's awesome. Okay, let's go to the next one. She died rather early in life. She died of ovarian cancer. And as she was dying, she was actually working on Hour of the Star, which is the book that we're going to talk about. She knew she had cancer, or she knew something was wrong. She was in the hospital, but her family wouldn't tell her exactly how bad it was. So she was in the hospital writing this book. Her assistant was helping her write this book. And she didn't know how bad it was, but Clarice is smart. She knew it was bad, but she didn't know it was like, oh, you're terminal bad, right? So that was interesting. She was born in the Ukraine, and her family immigrated to Brazil, so she is Brazilian. And it's interesting, a lot of these writers studied law or were journalists before they became like writers, big writers. So she's the same. She studied law, never practiced it. But that idea of law and like process stayed with her throughout her entire career. And she survived an accident in 1966 where she fell asleep with a lit cigarette. It burned a big chunk of her body. She survived it, but you know, trauma, that's the thing. So she wrote this novel, Hour of the Star, as she was dying, right? And which is interesting, next one, because this particular story is, you don't read Clarice Lispector if you're certain about life. You read her when you're uncertain, because Clarice Lispector is half cerebral, half emotion. Right? To understand her as accurately as you can, you have to have the right mix of like intelligence, I get it, and then the right mix of emotional, okay, I feel it, right? And some days you have more than one than the other, and then you don't get her at all. So she's really interesting. So let's talk about Hour of the Star. Hour of the Star is told through first person. Those who have me in 1302 know exactly what I mean when I said the first person. Yes? Yes? We don't have to go over it for a class? I've done my job. So first person, and is actually about a writer, his name is Rodrigo, who is talking about his creation, his character. Her name is Makeba. And Makeba, he describes this poor character horribly. He hates her and loves her at the same time. She smells, she's ugly, she has long teeth, she looks like a horse. He has said atrocities about this. But at the same time, she's naive and sweet, and he's protective of her. So this particular writer is protective of his creation, and because he's protective of his creation, he says all the things. And so at the time when you're reading this, you are cheering for Makeba, but you're also like, girl, get it together. Girl is not getting it together. Spoiler alert, she doesn't make it, she dies. And the way that she dies and how that she dies speaks a lot about what Lispector was talking about or trying to get at the heart of this story, which is, who has the authority to assign meaning to a life? And can meaning ever be secured? This is what she's playing with. She's at the end of her life. She's in the hospital. Cancer is ravaging her body. And she's looking back at her life, and she's like, what did it all mean? What did I really do with my life? And so she's having her existential crisis, as Clarice Lispector can only have an existential crisis. And she's really asking, if I were to say my life was meaningful, what makes it meaningful? Is it because I say so, or is there just a test of what makes a life meaningful? We'll answer this at the end. Next is Gabo, my maestro. This was an interesting read. I do have to say, as an aside, as I was preparing for this talk, reading Until August again. I read it the first time. When I read it the first time, I was very much in mourning of his death and very much in mourning of the talent. So I read it, and I'm like, okay, it's done. When I read it for this one, I was very much like, how did I miss all this stuff? And second, I'm just like, I feel like I understand how his brain works a little bit better. So let's go to the next one. All right, his life. There's lots of life here. These are the highlights. So he became a journalist first before he did any of the writing. He was supposed to become a lawyer. And he sent word and said, I don't want to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a writer. And by the way, I'm already working as a reporter for a newspaper. This is Gabo. Won Nobel Prize in '82. He had cancer. So this is our third author that has cancer, or had cancer, but he recovered from cancer. He had dementia. So he had an interesting path towards the publication of this. He did not want this particular book published. He thought it was not his best work. I agree it's not his best work, but I do believe it should be published. I think his family did the correct thing, which pains me to say because I'm usually like, no, the author has complete say, but they were right. So he was battling dementia and trying to finish this bad boy before it was gone. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then he's known for a magical realism. We had talked about him ad nauseum at one point. I'm gonna move on because y'all know. All right, Until August. This is, I'm going to say for Gabo, this is his dirty old man era. So Until August and My Melancholy Horse, which is what he wrote and published before he died. And had Until August not been published, that would have been his last work. They were both novellas. The Melancholy Horse novella was called Ella at the time when he was trying to put them together. They were both kind of like there at the same time. He was developing both. And then he decided the Ella would be developed first, and then he would come back to Until August. So that's interesting. So essentially, what makes this dirty old man is that it's a story about a middle-aged woman who goes towards her sexual awakening, her second sexual awakening, as she does this ritual trip every year to an island to put flowers on her mother's grave. And we capture her like 9 years into this ritual, and somehow something kind of clicks inside of her, and she decides to take a lover. And after she takes a lover, she doesn't feel guilt, not for a while, but things start to change in her life. Things change in her life with her relationship with her husband. They're more amorous now. Her daughter wants to become a nun. She's trying to convince her daughter to not become a nun. She ends up being a nun anyway. And her son is a big musician. And she's trying to get him to like settle down. He's not settling down. So for the next year, she takes another lover again. And things actually get better at home, right? There's very little guilt. The third year, she can't find a lover to take. And so things now digress at home, which is interesting too. So at the end of all this awakening, it's not so much a book about sex, though I can see how people are just like, oh my God, dirty old man. Yes, Gabo was a dirty old man at the end of his life. I get it. But also, he's not talking about like this woman who's having affairs. She's talking about this woman trying to find who she is after bending and putting herself in a box for all these years. Who she was, who she really is in the core, is not who she is now. She's a wife, she's a mother. She helps the household do what the household does. She takes care of everyone, including putting flowers on her dead mother's grave, and yet, who is she? This is her trying to find herself. And so this is what he asks. Can ritual preserve who we are, or does it slowly conceal who we become? Yeah, that was a deep one. It's a novella, man. It's like that big. And yet, interesting thing about the publication of Until August, it's supposed to be 4 novellas about the same family or the same people. This is supposed to be novella number 2. Until August was supposed to be novella number 2. That particular novella, he was, again, racing against dementia to get it done. And after he was done with like the 5th version, the 5th draft of this, he said, I cannot continue writing this because my memory is gone. For him, memory is a database, is where everything comes from. He holds complete worlds and stories in his head. And as that was slipping away, he could no longer do it. So the edits of this are actually at the University of Texas at the Ransom Center under lock and key because I couldn't see them. They wouldn't let me. One day we will all be able to see them. That day is not today. All right. So we talked about all 4 of them. All 4 of them have interesting stories, interesting backgrounds, interesting stories of how all the things came to be, right? So all of them had questions to ask. So here is where we get the answers. Next slide. When all else fails, responsibility remains. This is Octavia Butler. This is Book of Martha. Because even though humanity is doing what humanity does, someone still has to be responsible. Humanity still has to be saved. Next. Graham Greene's is Certainty Collapses When Doubt Enters. Even though you're killing the last living Christian in the form of hope, that little ground of dirt of doubt is what starts to collapse systems. Next. Not every life needs meaning to be meaningful. Makeba, naive little character, and her life, there wasn't anything big in her life, but that does not mean because nothing big happened and she's kind of regular that it wasn't meaningful. Next. Life continues after clarity unsettles you. Yes, the clarity of I need to awaken. I need to find who I am. And yes, I'm doing this probably in the most controversial way of doing it. But this clarity is very unsettling, and something about this is ticking into me, so that way I can continue. So I want to end this talk with Clarice Lispector because she writes things very well, a lot better than I can say them. So this is the last line of Story of an Hour. My God, I only remembered that we die, but me too? Don't forget that for now, it is strawberry season. Yes. Take that meaning from what you will. Thank you.